our database, in our little book database, is to add something else, to complicate things a little bit and have more than one piece of data, more than one table interact with each other. In this case, I'm going to have book reviews. So every book can have many reviews. The reviews are going to have a score, which is like the number of stars, or from 1 to 5, whatever you want to do, and a comment. That's what a review is going to have. So let's do it. Let's close this. The first thing I have to do now is to create a model of what a review will look like. This is, again, is like a review table. So I'm going to add a class, which is going to be a clear class, and that's going to be the class name. It's going to be review.class.cs. So the review will have a unique identifier. Each review will have its unique identifier. So I'm going to say public int ID. Capital I, capital D is important because then the framework recognizes this as an ID and primary key field. Get set. Then I'm going to have each review must be associated to some book, right? So I'm going to have a book ID. And if I put the word book, capital B-O-O-K, and then capital I, capital D, it will recognize this as a foreign key that must link to the ID attribute in the book object or in the book table. This is not a general rule that it will recognize, whatever attribute in capitals next to no. Just for the IDs, for foreign keys, if you name an attribute, the name of a table, and then capital I, capital D, it will recognize as a foreign key for the ID field of that table. So we will have a review. Each review will have its unique identifier, but also it will point to a book. Which book am I reviewing? And then I will have a score that basically for now it's the number of stars. Get set or set get, doesn't matter. And then I'm going to have a comment, which is the user comment, getter and setter. So this is my review. Okay. Now the other thing that I'm going to do with this is that in my book model, I'm going to reflect that each book can have a bunch of reviews. And I'm going to do this by adding another property, which is going to be of type iCollection, and it's going to have it's going to be a collection of objects of type review, right? And I'm going to have a get and a set for this. So, and I will call this attribute, of course I need the name of this variable, I'll call it reviews. Okay, so a book has a bunch of things and a list of reviews and a collection of reviews. And each review has an ID, a reference to the book that it's a review for, the score, which is basically the number of stars, or 1 to 5, from 1 to 10, whatever, and then a comment set by the user. Now I've created the model, right? Now, here's a couple of things that have happened when we created the book controller, okay? That when we created the book controller, that happened behind the scenes and we didn't know. One of these is if we go to the data class here, there's a bookstore2 context.cs. This is the class that serves as a bridge between my code and the database, so that I can do things like book context.book that will actually get a link to the database of books, to the books objects in the database. Well, this class has a field here, right here, public dbset. Then what happens here is that this basically creates a link to a database table. What's the database table? What's the link going to be? Well, it says that the link is going to be similar to a model, to a book, a model of a book, and the data table is called book. Okay. Well, we need to create the same thing for reviews. So I'm going to add a public dbset um, bookstore 2, that's my namespace, then models, and then reviews, and I'm going to call this review. That's going to be the name of the table. Get set. That's it. So this is not super necessary to do because the book class already now has a reference to the review table, but it's convenient to always do it because you can access it directly. We'll see how to do that later on, but for now, just for every table that you have on the database, have a variable here. It doesn't hurt. Now, your context class now has 2 of these database sets, which will then be able to access the table. Now, what we need to do now with the database, because the table has changed a little bit and the database itself has changed, right? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and delete this database. I'm going to delete the database books. I'm going to right here, go here, delete. It's going to delete the database. I'll say OK because I'm going to modify it. You can still modify it without deleting it. It's just if you delete it, it's starting from scratch, and that's usually good at this stage of development. So what I'm going to do now is, if you remember when we created the book database, we needed to do a migration and an update to the database. So I will create a migration. I'm going to go to the package manager console, which I can get to because I have it here. But if you don't have it here, then you can always get to it from Tools, NuGet Package Manager, Package Manager Console. So I'm going to go here, and where am I? There's the prompt. All right. And with this prompt, I'm going to say add migration, which will read this data bookstore 2 context and will take all the actions necessary, right? I'm going to call this as the second migration, second M for second migration. I just need to give it a name. And then I hit enter. What this second migration has created is an incremental data change to the database. So if we go into the migrations folder, we'll see that this was my initial migration and this is my second migration. These are C# classes that will modify the database as we go incrementally. Okay. Now I've added the migrations. Now I need to update the database. So I will issue the command update database. So you might get there is an object already named review in the database. That's fine. Let's look at the database. So we will refresh this, open my databases. We'll see that here's the bookstore. And in the tables, you will see that there are 2 tables now, book and review. Okay? So, yes. So what happens now is that we will need to start now doing the same thing we did for our book. We need to do for our reviews. I want to be able to create, delete, edit reviews, and all the stuff, right? For that, I need a controller for the reviews. So I'm just gonna right-click, say Add Controller, and it's gonna be a MVC controller with views using Entity Framework, which basically will do a lot of the scaffolding for me. I'll say Add. The model class is going to be my reviews class. The context stays the same. This is the same context as I use for the bookstore if you're following the application. If not, just click plus and accept the default. Then I'm going to use a layout, and it's going to be called reviews controller. So the default is good. I'm just hitting add. So now I have controllers and views for both reviews and for the book. So let's run it and see what is it like so far. All right. So we have our page here. We can go to our book, to our books controller, which will display the list of books and will allow me to edit details and whatnot. If I go to details here of Harry Potter, I will see that all the details are here, but notice there's no place for the reviews. That's interesting. Now let's go to our reviews controller and see what happens. Let's go here, reviews. I have no reviews, but let's create a new review. I'm going to try to review Harry Potter. So the score for Harry Potter is a 5. The comment is very fun read. And then the book ID is going to be Harry Potter. But oh, there's no book ID. There's no way for me to modify this. So we've noticed two problems. When I go to the details of the book, I don't see the reviews for that book. And when I want to create a review, I cannot attach it to a book. We're going to try to solve both problems. So let's look at the problem. The first problem, I can't create reviews for a given book. Okay? So what I will do there, well, let's look at, I saw that there was a drop-down box, a select box in HTML talk, right? A select box on the create page of the reviews. So I'm going to go to my views, reviews, and look at the create page. Now in this HTML here, or pseudo HTML, CHTML, I see a form. I see the select right here. That's where the select is coming from. This is going to be the select for the book ID field. It's the class is form control. That's something for Bootstrap to style. And the items, the items come from a variable book ID in the view bag. Remember, the view bag is a way to pass variables or pass values or objects from the controller to the view. So this was clearly empty because the select box was empty, right? So if I can only put all the book IDs and all the book names here in this view bag, then the items of the select will be each book that I can select. That would be really nice. So let's do that. In the view bag, book ID, I will try to put all the books so I can select them. So the view bag, that is created in the controller. Because this is the create CSHTML page, I need to go to the controller for the reviews controller, and the create method. So I'm going to go to controllers, reviews controller, and here I'm going to go to the create method. Let's look at the create method. Oh, here's one of the create. There's two create methods because create can be coming from different places. But there's two, this is for a post. Here's the thing though. Create just returns the view. There's nothing populates that view bag. So let's create a little function at the end of the class, just for organizational purposes, that actually populates that book ID in the view bag, the book ID field. We're going to call this, it's going to be a private and void because all I want to do is populate the view bag. I don't want to return anything. So private void, I'm going to call it populate books. Okay? And you know what? I'm going to make it very specific to a drop-down list item. So populate books drop-down list. And here, I'm going to add a books query variable. And the books query variable is something that I'm going to use to query the database by using my objects. Okay? The objects that I've created, and that implies using the context. The context, remember, is that interface between my objects and my database. It's here, right here, bookstore.context, right? Okay, so the books query, I'm going to do the following. From a variable d in, and here, I'm going to use this context variable that I kind of get for free, from d in context dot book, because in the context variable we do have a book object. Remember, we added this with a db with a db variable. So in context dot, for each object in the context dot book, that's all the books, ordered by one attribute of book can be, d dot title, ordered by title. So I'm going to have them order. I'm going to select all these books. So what this is saying is my books query, this is forming a query. And the query says basically from the table books, select all the books ordered by title. And now I have to populate my view bag, book ID. So viewbag.bookid, that was the variable name, equals, and remember this needs to be a select box, right? This is an HTML element that I can create from C#. So it's going to be a new select list. It's actually a set of items, right? Select list, and select list creates a set of items, right? And it has a specific signature. So first I need the items in the collection. Well, that's the books query, right? That contains, remember, all the books ordered by title. The books query. Then I'm going to see in this select, right? What's going to act as the value? What field of a book model will be the value? Well, the ID is going to be the value. And which field is going to be the actual displayed field? Well, the title, right? And that will create that select. So now I have a function that in theory will grab every book in the database and will put it as part of a select list in the viewbag book ID. So I'm populating this variable that needs to be present in the create review. So let's go to the create method again. Let's go to the create method. Where's the create? The create method, right? And here, this create method. And before we return the view, we're going to call the populate books drop-down list. Now, because there's another create method that will get called at some point, before it returns its view, I'm also going to call this populate books drop-down list. Let's see how this works. Reviews create. And now you see that I have a drop-down here. I want to review Harry Potter. I can pick it from the list because now I'm bringing all the books. The score is going to be a 10, and the comment is going to be very nice book. I'll create this review. And as you can see, it shows in the reviews. I'm going to create a new review for Harry Potter. Here, Harry Potter. The score is going to be a 5, and the comment is going to be so book, fun sometimes. I'm going to create this review again. So now I have 2 reviews for Harry Potter, and just for fun, I'm going to create 1 review for the other book, A Question of Character, and the score is going to be 2, and it's $2 book, which is not, but it's okay. So I have reviews for all the books in my database now. The problem is that if I go to the books list, and I go to the details of one particular book, those reviews don't show up. So now I need to solve that part of the problem. So back in my code, it is the details method, right? Because it's a details page of the books, right? That displays all the details and is not displaying my reviews. So I need to go to the books controller and its details method. Let's look for the details method. It's right here, okay? The details are of a book. Now, let's look at how it selects from the database, how it selects the books from the database. There's a var book here, which is a book model that will be selected, and that is selected again from this context book class, right? Context is my class to interact with the database, right? Book is the object alias for the book table, right? So it's going to create a book. Now, this await is because it needs to wait for the database access. You don't want it to not be able to access it in time and keep going. So you say await context.book, that selects the book from the database, and here you start putting conditions. One of the conditions is that at least for every book, the ID attribute of that object, of that book, is equal to the ID that was passed here in the parameters. So if you say details of book 1, then I'm going to select all the books such that I'm going to select a book such that that book's ID is equal to 1. That's what I'm saying. Well, we need to change this. Remember the book model. We changed it to have, if I go to the book model, I'm sorry, if I go to the models book, the book model now we change it to have reviews. Okay, and we're going to make use of that. So now, in my books controller again, before I select the book ID, I'm going to do this. I'm going to select from the database book, right? And whatever book I select, I'm going to include I'm going to include, this is using MM. I'm going to include the objects, oh, come on. I'm going to include the objects such that the objects reviews are also included, reviews, right? So I'm going to include, oh, come on. All right, sorry about this. I'm going to include this object's reviews, the reviews object, which is another list of things, right? That points to a different table in the database. But the idea is that because the book model already has reviews associated, the framework knows how to associate those reviews based on book ID. So I'm going to select the table book, and for every book, all of its reviews. And from the reviews, from the book and reviews, I'm going to select the book such that the ID of the book is equal to the ID that was passed in the parameters. Optionally, we can say as no tracking to speed up things. This is a more efficient way to do things. Now, this will bring the books and the reviews, and I will believe that at faith. Now, how are we going to display these on the web page? Well, this is the details method, so it points to the details.cshtml in the views, right? So books here, details.cshtml. In this details, you see that there's commands to display the word title and then the actual title for the model for the book that's being passed. The same thing for the release date, the name and the value, for the author, the genre, and the price. So after all this, what we can do is we can create a little table here. The class, if you have a style sheet, you can do this. And I know that Bootstrap has that. And Bootstrap is the style sheet that we're using for the websites by default. So I'm going to create a table. The first row is going to contain the headers. The first header is going to be score because reviews have a score. And then the second header is going to have the comment because reviews have a comment. And then the next rows are going to be all the reviews. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of C# here. So for each var item, I'm going to call it item in model.reviews, because the model is a book, and the book has reviews, right? So for each item in model.reviews, so basically for each review, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a row with a cell that displays HTML display for, so we'll display the value of the item.score, and then the next cell will display HTML display for and such that item.comment. Okay, so that's going to be displaying this. You can just say item.score, item.comment, at item.score, at item.comment. Those work as well, but this will format the HTML properly. All right, so now I have the classes in the details, and I have the controller passing a model with reviews. So let's run it and see what happens. So here are our books, and if I go to the details of Harry Potter, I will see that I have the score and the comment for the reviews right here, right? The same way, if I go back to the list and look at the question of character, the details, I have the reviews. So we have learned to retrieve a model with its associated list of other little models, so the book and the reviews, and we've also seen how to select data from the database and populate stuff on the web in two different ways. That concludes our video on complicating things in the database.